Okay, in this video, I'm going to share with you the results of a fantasy series that I played between the 1985 St. Louis Cardinals and 1985 Toronto Blue Jays in a matchup of what was almost the World Series from 1985. Through a roll of the 20 side die, the Toronto Blue Jays have the home field, so they get games one and two at home. And what I always do is when I have games in the AL Park, I play with the DH, and in the NL Park, no DH. So what I decided to do for the St. Louis Cardinals for game number one was I put Mike Jorgensen at first base and just moved Jack Clark to DH, as we have a terrific pitching matchup in the first game where we have John Tudor going up against Dave Stieb. And you could see the St. Louis Cardinals were able to take game number one by a score of 7-5 in a game where the Blue Jays were able to jump on John Tudor pretty early. They had a 5-2 lead after 3 innings. And with the Blue Jays up 5-3 in the top half of the eighth inning, you could see that's the inning that I have circled over here. With one out, you had a Jack Clark single, and then Andy Van Slyke hits a 2-run home run off of Dave Stieb to tie the game. And that's how it would stay until the 10th inning, where with Dennis Lamp on the mound and one out, you had Jack Clark reach on a Willie Upshaw error. And then I pinch run Cedeno for Jack Clark. He steals second base, and Andy Van Slyke then follows that up with a 2-run home run, a ballpark effect home run, by the way. That's why I have the little black circle next to it. And this is where not having a real viable lefty to come out of the pen really kind of hurt the Blue Jays a little bit here, because I would have preferred if there was a lefty available to come in and, well, not pitch to Van Slyke, because in that case I would have had to have pinch hit for Van Slyke with probably Tito Landrum, and then turn around Terry Pendleton. But nonetheless, the St. Louis Cardinals take a 7-5 lead into the bottom half of the 10th inning. And you could see I left John Tudor in to get the first out in the bottom half of the 10th as he retires Lloyd Mosby. And then I bring in Todd Worrell, and he is able to retire pinch hitter Al Oliver, and then Bell strikes out to end the game. So the 85 Cardinals get a big game one win in Toronto by a score of 7-5. Okay, in game number two, we have Joaquin Andujar on the mound for the 85 Cards and Doyle Alexander going for the 85 Jays. And this was a game that you could see was never really in doubt. The Cardinals jumped all over Doyle Alexander as they score 7 runs against him in 1+ innings. You had a 2 RBI single by Andy Van Slyke in the bottom of the first to make it 3-0. Tito Landrum, who I inserted into the lineup to play right field in this game. The reason why I did that was because I just felt like the Cardinal lineup needed a little more pop in the bottom of the order. And Andy Van Slyke does have first base on his card, and he's actually a much better defensive first baseman than Jack Clark. So what I decided to do was put Landrum in right, Van Slyke at first, and keep Jack Clark at DH. So you see, Tito Landrum had a leadoff home run in the second inning to make it 4-0. And then you had 2 RBI single by Willie McGee, RBI single by Tom Herr, and next thing you know, it's 9-0 going into the bottom half of the second inning. You can see Willie McGee had a big day. He goes 4 for 4 with 4 RBI and 2 runs scored. I really didn't pack this game away until the Cardinals scored 2 more runs in the top half of the fifth inning to make it 11-1. That's why I used Acker and Caudle when the game was, I wouldn't say in doubt, because it was 9-1, but I was trying to keep it at 9-1, because the one thing about playing in Toronto is, all you got to do is get a couple of people on, and the ballpark effect home runs are very favorable in this park, where on a D20, it's a 1-12 from both sides of the plate. From a Blue Jays perspective, I was just looking at it like, okay, if I could just get a couple of people on and maybe pop one out, get the score to 9-4, 9-5, then we got a game. But once the Cardinals went ahead 11-1, it was pretty much over. I brought in Filer to just fill out the rest of the game. You could actually see he pitched really well. He only allowed 1 run in 4 innings of work. So the Cardinals get an easy game 2 win as they win this one by a score of 12-1. And we go back to St. Louis with the 85 Cardinals up 2-0. Okay, series moves now to St. Louis for games 3, 4, and if necessary, game 5. Your starters in game 3 will be Jimmy Key for the 85 Jays and Danny Cox for the 85 Cards. And had a feeling going into this game that Jimmy Key was going to pitch a really solid game. And boy, was I wrong about that, as the Cardinals score 5 runs off him in the bottom half of the first inning. You see, Willie McGee had a solo home run. And then Pendleton had an RBI single to make it 2-0, and then that guy again, Tito Landrum, hits a 3-run home run to make it 5-0. Now, if you kind of see, because I cropped this picture off a little bit to kind of help tell the story of the game, you see this fly ball out by Willie McGee to end the bottom half of the fourth inning. I put a star next to that because I rolled that, and that was a ballpark effect home run that came up and out on the 20 side die. And I was kind of thinking to myself when that happened, I was like, that was the first break that the Blue Jays have gotten since like the middle of game 1. And I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe the just tide is turning in the series, where it seemed like for a while there the Cardinals were just getting every single roll. And then sure enough, you're going to see here in the top half of the 5th inning with the Jays down 5-0, the Blue Jays are finally able to mount a rally. You had an RBI single by Barfield. The big hit in the inning was a 2 RBI triple by Tony Fernandez. And then you had a RBI pinch hit single by Al Oliver to make the score 5-4. I pulled Danny Cox after the Mosby walk, and Jeff Lottie was able to come in and hold down the fort for at least the rest of that 5th inning, as he retired Mullenix and then he retired George Bell. So the game would stay 5-4 until the top half of the 7th inning, where Cliff Johnson leads off with a pinch hit walk. Really had no one to pinch run for him necessarily, as far as like stealing a base. But I did pinch run Manuel Lee, and that turned out to be a big move, because on the fly ball out that Mosby had with 1 out, I was able to advance Manuel Lee to second base, and sure enough, Garth Orge comes up and pinch hits a RBI double. That was against Ken Daly. So the Blue Jays were able to come all the way back to tie the game at 5. Then in the bottom half of the 7th inning, the Cardinals were able to take the lead that they would not relinquish. With with Dennis Lamp on the mound, Andy Van Slyke gets a pinch hit single, then he steals second, and then the big hit of the inning and of the game was Vince Coleman has a RBI double, and you could see I put a little 7 next to it to signify that that was a fly ball to left field, and that was George Bell's territory, and so once again, his bad defense rears its head. So the Cardinals were able to take a lead. Then they get another run with a Tom Herr RBI single, and that's how this game would end. The 85 Cardinals take a 3-0 series lead with a 7-5 win. You see Todd Worrell pitches 2 scoreless innings out of the pen to get the save. Okay, moving on to game number 4 now. With the Cardinals holding a 3-0 series lead, we have a rematch of the game 1 starters, Dave Stieb against John Tudor. Obviously, both pitchers pitching on 3 days rest. So let's see if the Blue Jays can hold off elimination. And you're going to see that Dave Stieb comes through in the clutch as he goes 8 scoreless innings. I made some changes to the Blue Jays lineup before the game. Decided to move Tony Fernandez and Garth Orge to the top of the lineup, mainly because I was literally getting nothing out of Garcia and Mosby in the top of the order. And I refer you to check out my 1985 Toronto Blue Jays team analysis video that I did a while back, because I did speak on that, about how if you want to improve the lineup against left-handed pitching, to definitely look into moving Tony Fernandez and Garth Orge move them up higher in the order. And you could see it really paid off well, as Tony Fernandez had reached base 4 times, and Garth Orge had a RBI single in the bottom half of the first inning. Full disclosure, that leadoff double by Tony Fernandez, that was actually a hit off of the pitcher card, but nonetheless, Fernandez was able to get on, and then Garth Orge was able to drive him in with a two asterisk single. And you could see Toronto was just able to pick away and just score a run here and there, and it leads to a easy 5-0 win. So the Toronto Blue Jays are able to hold off elimination as they win Game 4. And if you're the 85 Blue Jays, you got to be feeling pretty good about yourselves because you just won an elimination game beating the Cardinals' best pitcher. You live to fight another day. So let's move on and see what happens in game number 5. In game number 5, I decided not to bring back the game 2 pitchers, Doyle Alexander and Joaquin Andujar. Wasn't crazy about either of them throwing on 3 days rest. So what I did was we have Jim Clancy going for the 85 Blue Jays and Bob Forsch going for the 1985 Cards. And it was a well-pitched game on both sides. We have Jack Clark hitting a solo home run in the bottom half of the 8th inning with one out to give the 1985 Cards a 3-2 lead going into the top half of the ninth. And with Todd Worrell on the mound, let me show you what happens in the ninth inning with the 85 Blue Jays. George Bell leads off the top half of the ninth inning with a solo home run. Then with one out, Jesse Barfield gets a triple. And then Ernie Witt makes an out without advancing the runner. So with 2 outs and a runner on third, Damaso Garcia is up and he reaches on a Terry Pendleton error. So that's how the Blue Jays would take a 4-3 lead that they would not relinquish. You may notice there in the top half of the ninth inning, I kind of went a little back and forth as to what I wanted to do with the pitcher spot up with the Blue Jays up 4-3 and a runner on first with 2 out. I decided to pinch hit Al Oliver for Tom Henke. And I knew I was taking a little bit of a risk there, removing Henke and bringing in Dennis Lamp to close the game. But I really, really wanted to try to get a little bit of a rally going for the Blue Jays and try to get an insurance run or two. It didn't work out with Al Oliver, but you could see Dennis Lamp retires aside in the bottom half of the ninth inning. So the 1985 Blue Jays, who were down 3-0 in the series, win games 4 and 5, and they push the series back to Toronto for a game 6. In game number 6, we have a rematch of the game 2 starters, Joaquin Andujar and Doyle Alexander. And I went with Alexander in game number 6, even after he got hit around really hard in game number 2, because it was basically either him or Jimmy Key on 3 days rest. And the way I look at it is when the cards are pretty much equal, like one card is not discernibly better than the other, I'd rather go with the pitcher going on full rest. So that was my decision, going with Doyle Alexander in game number 6. I could always have Jimmy Key in the background ready to go on 3 days rest and go a couple innings out of the bullpen. And obviously, if the Blue Jays were to get game number 6, then it would be Dave Stieb throwing game number 7. So that's our pitching matchup for game number 6. And you're going to see the Toronto Blue Jays are able to force a game number 7 as they win game 6 by a score of 7-5, as they were really able to really hit around Joaquin Andujar pretty hard. You see Rance Mulliniks had a 2-run home run in the bottom of the first. Ernie Witt hits a solo home run in the bottom of the second to make it 3-0. And then the big blow was a Jesse Barfield 2-run home run in the bottom half of the 4th inning to make it 5-0. The 85 Cardinals were able to claw back into the game and make it interesting. As you see, they scored 2 in the 7th and 3 in the 8th. But as you see, Tom Henke is able to close the door as he goes 1 1/3 innings to get the save. So we have the Toronto Blue Jays, who have come back from a 3-0 series deficit to win 3 straight, forcing a game number 7 in Toronto. Okay, so here we go. Game number 7 for the 3rd time in the series. We have the 2 aces doing battle, John Tudor for the Cards and Dave Stieb for the Blue Jays. Obviously, game 7 being played in Toronto. And let me show you what happens in game number 7. And truth be told, let me just come right out and say this game flat out pissed me off. You're going to see the St. Louis Cardinals win the game by a score of 7-1. Now, I don't care who wins these series. I just play them for fun and I just do these videos for fun. But the reason why this game really ticked me off was because you could see the Toronto Blue Jays committed 5 errors in the game. And it was just one of those things that happens sometimes when you play Strat-O-Matic. I know it's just the way the fielding chart is. You could see if we were to go through the errors, if we were to look at the Cardinals hitting play by play. Vince Coleman leads off the game reaching on a Tony Fernandez error. Then with 2 out and a runner on first in the bottom half of the second inning, Terry Porter reaches on another Tony Fernandez error. In the top half of the third inning, with 1 out and 2 on, Jack Clark reaches on a Rance Mullenix error. And then in the top half of the fourth inning, we have 2 errors. You have an error by Damaso Garcia on a ball that Darryl Porter hit to lead off the top of the fourth. And then you had a very big error by pitcher Dave Stieb on a ball hit by Vince Coleman. And to me, this just completely killed the momentum of the game. I think in some ways it killed the legitimacy of the game. Not to say that a team hasn't made 5 errors before in the history of baseball. Like I understand these things happen. But there are times when I'm playing Strat-O-Matic where I'm just like, I need to come up with some kind of a house rule to try to rein this in a little bit, because sometimes the errors can really, really pile up. And I have spoken before in the past about how Tony Fernandez, he does have a high E rating, yet at the same time, he's a 1 in the field. So one of my house rules, which I'm going to bring back and readopt, is I used to have a house rule that said if you were a 1 or 2 in the field and it comes up a split and you're rolling the 2d6s to decide whether or not it's an error, it has to come up an error on 2 out of 3 rolls. So for example, if the first roll is not an error, then it's just an out. If the first roll is an error, then you get another roll. So it's best 2 out of 3. Because to me, in my opinion, sometimes the errors can just pile up in Strat-O-Matic at times where I just don't really think it's really justified. I understand E ratings are what they are, and the fielding chart is what it is. But in my opinion, I did not want to see Game 7 go down this way. I'd have been very happy if it was Tudor and Steve locking horns for 6, maybe 7 innings on 3 days rest in a 1-1, 2-1, 2-0 game or something like that, and then let the bullpens decide it. To me, this game kind of killed the entire series. But nonetheless, as you could see, the St. Louis Cardinals are able to take advantage of the errors at least, and through the Blue Jays making 5 errors and the Cardinals getting 10 hits in the game, they're able to win the game by a score of 7-1. I really did stretch John Tudor out a little bit on 3 days rest, even though he was in his point of weakness pitching on 3 days rest. I felt like he was the best option, and you could see in that bottom half of the 8th inning, that was really the only time where the 85 Blue Jays were trying to make some noise. You could see if we're to go through it play by play, George Bell led off with a single. Then you have a Burrow single. If I remember right, that Jeff Burrow single was a point of weakness single. Then you had a Barfield strikeout, an Upshaw walk, and Ernie Witt at the plate. So what I decided to do for the 85 Blue Jays, being that it's basically now or never, is I pinch hit Cliff Johnson. So I've got the bases loaded and 1 out and Cliff Johnson on the mound. And this is where I thought about taking Tudor out. But I said to myself, he's got the best card on the staff, even though he's in his point of weakness, because the other option there would have been if I take Tudor out and bring in Todd Worrell, then what the 85 Blue Jays would do is they would simply pinch hit Al Oliver for Cliff Johnson. So it basically came down to what do I want? John Tudor against Cliff Johnson or Todd Worrell against Al Oliver. And as you can see, it worked out for the 85 Cards as Cliff Johnson is able to ground into a double play. And that's how the series ends. The 1985 Cardinals defeat the 1985 Blue Jays 4-3.